Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me come to your Pick Chat transition series. My name is Lesley Blecharczyk, and I've worked for Community Bridges in New Hampshire for over 20 years. And prior to that, I worked in special education in the Keene area. But I'm also a family member. My sister is someone who receives support through the developmental services system here in New Hampshire to live her good life. There has been a lot of buzz around the state about charting the life course. And I'm often asked, what exactly is charting the life course? What is it all about? So today, I hope to give you a brief introduction about the Charting the Life Course framework. And I'll also be able to share some examples of how students, families, and their planning teams have applied Charting the Life course to their high school transition planning. And I hope that this entices you to learn a little bit more about the concepts and tools and strategies so you can give it a try yourself and continue to share and learn with others across the state. First, I want to give you a little bit about where Charting the Life course came from. So the Charting the Life course framework evolved from a collaboration between the University of Missouri Institute for Human Development and their conversations with the Missouri Family Resource Center, which is made up of families from all across the state of Missouri. Their essential question was, what do families need to know and do to support their family member with a disability across the entire lifespan? So over time, their ideas evolved into the Charting the Life course framework. Since these first conversations in 2010, this group has partnered with many different statewide and national stakeholders to really share these person-centered thinking and planning tools and strategies that can be used in combination with other person-centered thinking and planning tools and strategies. There are Charting the Life course communities of practice for supporting families all across the country. I think there are up to maybe 22 right now. Last year, New Hampshire began working with the Charting the Life course national team to develop a community of practice in New Hampshire. So that is really, really exciting. And moving forward, there will be lots of opportunities for you to learn and connect and try this out and share it with others. What is meant by that term framework? The framework for Charting the Life course is built around some really key concepts, a core belief, some key principles, and some foundational tools that can be used to guide conversation and capture information that comes out through those conversations. So I'm going to share a few of those with you today. And as we go through this overview, keep in mind some of the terms that we often hear during high school transition planning. There are federal and state requirements that schools need to uphold related to creating IEPs and transition plans in IEPs that really speak to being person-centered to each student. Many other programs and systems that a student might be connected to as well are also required to demonstrate some of the same person-centered concepts and plans as they provide their supports and services. And this includes the area agency system that I work in. It includes vocational rehabilitation and any other medical or physical support or mental health system supports that accept Medicaid funding. So I hope you'll see how Charting the Life course tools and concepts can help provide an approach and a common language, if you will, that can help coordinate planning for the student, no matter who they may be connected with. The Charting the Life course core belief is that all people have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their own life aspirations. Notice that this does not say all people with disabilities, but all people. The Charting the Life course framework was created to help people of all ages and their families develop a vision for what a meaningful, full, good life looks like for that person. And this really works for anybody. I am going to share some of the key principles with you, but what I want you to notice is that the Charting the Life course uses terms and symbols and graphics and colors to express concepts and tools. This really makes it accessible for folks who don't, use the written word as much to communicate. And these graphics are intentional. The colors and shapes and structure of the graphics mean something. They represent the concepts visually and become part of the Charting the Life course language. This brings us to the first principle I want to share, which is called the person in the context of family. Certainly, we need to understand the person at the center of our planning efforts. Who are they? What is important and meaningful to them? What have their life experiences been? What are their hopes, dreams, and aspirations for their future? What are the areas of support they need and appreciate to be successful? But Charting the Life course also encourages us to focus on the roles and perspectives and the needs of families. When applying Charting the Life course concepts to planning for a good life with individuals, the idea of a good life extends to a good life for all. As a family member of a person with a disability, I really appreciate that Charting the Life course principle encourage us to keep in mind the experiences and needs of family members as well. It also encourages us to acknowledge that families need to be supported in ways that maximize their strengths, to be able to develop their capacities, and to provide the type of support that's most helpful and necessary at the time that families need it. Speaking of supporting people and their families, one of my favorite principles is called the 3 buckets of support. People and families benefit certainly from those formal direct assistance types of supports and services that may come from public and private organizations. But we've learned from families that they also need other kinds of supports as well. And this is where the concept of the 3 buckets comes in. So the different types of supports that people want and need. The first bucket, the orange bucket, is called connecting and networking. This includes those opportunities for families and people to connect with each other, to share strengths, to learn from and support each other, to be able to talk to others who have lived a similar experience, who've been there, who really get it. The blue bucket is called discovery and navigation. This includes the information, resources, skill development opportunities, and really learning how to navigate within various systems to be able to understand what other types of supports and resources may be out there and how to work within different kinds of systems and supports. The third bucket is the green one. It's called goods and services. And that includes those types of supports I mentioned a minute ago that are recognized as those more formal services and supports, those day-to-day direct assistance types of supports in home, in school, that people receive at work or out in the community. Sometimes those kind of medical or physical supports or even financial supports like respite and things like that. These are those day-to-day tangible items that people can purchase or use from public and private organizations. But often our conversations start with that green bucket and don't go beyond it. Much of our conversation is really focused on those direct services. And so we need to make sure that we think in the context rather, of all 3 buckets. That's really a way for people and families to be able to direct supporters and systems toward your priorities and needs and to advocate for what you need, to think beyond just direct support, but what kind of information do you need? What would be helpful to you to connect with other people? So we really want to make sure we pay attention to filling all of those buckets of needs. This brings us to the principle of life stages. Person-centered thinking and planning works at all ages. It's important to have high expectations for meaningful opportunities at each stage and to revisit what meaningful and what a good life means as people grow and evolve and mature. Each stage of life impacts the others, and we're influenced and shaped by the experiences in our past. We can also be shaped by the experiences of other family members. We also consider that as the people we support are going through their life stages and have different aspirations and needs, so are families. Families' experiences and needs for support change across the life stage as well. And oftentimes, families are supporting people in all different life stages. So it's really important to think about all of the life stages as we move forward in supporting people and families. When envisioning and planning for the future, it's helpful to think about the principle of achieving positive life outcomes across all life domains. This principle is really closely related to life stages. Essentially, this concept encourages us to think about the wide range of experiences that all people want, such as relationships and connections, opportunities to be social, to have career and employment opportunities, to learn, to have great experiences, in community life, to be well connected, to stay healthy and safe, and to learn how to advocate and make decisions for yourself. This really helps us raise expectations and see a full life of experiences, not just a limited array of options that might be seen as available for people with disabilities, or those experiences and services and supports that only consider health and safety. This really helps us think broadly about a good, full, meaningful life in areas that are important, really, to all humans. So that gives you an overview of a couple of the really foundational key principles for charting the life course. And next I'm going to share with you a couple of charting the life course's foundational tools. So we use a lot of different terms here. And so what do I mean by a tool? Essentially, a tool, is a device that's used to carry out a particular function. So for our purposes, tools are formats for guiding planning conversations and for recording and organizing the information and ideas that's been gathered so it can be shared, to record what people learn over time. These are kind of worksheets, if you will, that capture your thinking and allow you to be able to share your thinking over time. You'll see when you look at the Charting the Life course website, that are tools that are specific to people, person-centered tools, and there are tools that are particularly helpful for family perspective as well. So the first tool I want to share is called the trajectory, or the trajectory of life experiences across the lifespan. That term trajectory is basically the path or the course or direction that something or someone travels over time toward where they're headed. So this visual shows an arrow that travels across the page from left to right, and it really depicts that movement toward the future of what a person is able to identify, what they want, in their life. So we're in football season, right? So you can think of it like the direction of football takes from the quarterback to the receiver. You can then think about it as the path of your life's journey, and you can plot and plan and navigate over time with experiences and opportunities that'll lead you closer to your vision of a good life. So think about a term we hear related to high school IEPs and transition plans: measurable post-secondary goals. That's related to this trajectory. The trajectory tool guides us to think about, what does a future good life look like for the person? What opportunities, experiences, connections, what situations and conditions really support positive outcomes. It helps us really think about, also equally important to think about, what does the person not want in their life? What do they want to avoid? What is really things that would draw them away from their good life? The beginning of the arrow on the left can show where the person is now. What's the current situation? You can think in school terms of that term, present level of performance. The middle part then, between where the person is now and where they want to be in the future, calls for us to think about the types of experiences and opportunities, activities, and situations to try or create that will lead the person closer to the vision of what they want and steer them away from what it is that they don't want. You can think about this as a coordinated set of activities, another IEP term. This is where you can map out the classes, activities, supports, experiences that add to the transition plan, and what the student will do also in their home or out in the community as well as in school. You can also really be clear about the things that you don't want to have happen that may draw someone away from that vision of what it is that they want. One of the most powerful tools in the Charting the Life Course framework is called the Integrated Support Star. If the trajectory helps us map out what experiences to plan, the Integrated Support Star helps us think about how do we carry that out. The Integrated Support Star helps broaden our thinking about where supports can come from and how we can combine and therefore leverage a variety of supports to better meet overall needs. We all constantly use an integrated array of support to get through life, through family and personal connection, to using community resources and technology, and even those supports that we might be eligible for, like health insurance, for instance. So think about a star with 5 points, and the 5 points of the integrated support star are, starting from the top, the person's own qualities and skills and knowledge and experience that they bring to the table for strengths. Really consider what that person, can do. Then we have, in that purple section, relationships. Supports that can come from family and the personal support network. It's important to really bring in a broad web of relationships around the person and allow people to be able to come in and play a positive role in somebody's life and provide supports where they may be needed. If you go directly opposite to the pink point of the star, that's technology support. And, we keep seeing technology evolve rapidly and provide ways that we are all able to connect or just live our daily lives, or ways that technology can make life easier or even possible for some folks. We think about low tech, technology as well as high tech. Right under that, in the blue section, is community-based supports. Those are the supports and resources that are available in the community to anybody. And we want to make sure to think about those supports as well. And then we come to the last point of the star. Again, you see that color green. These are eligibility specific supports. Or again, the supports that we think of as those more formal, direct supports that may come from programs and systems. And certainly those are really important to think about. And you want to make sure that you work through all of the different eligibility, requirements for the different formal supports and systems. But often our conversation don't go beyond that. We often put all of our eggs in that basket of eligibility specific supports or relationship based supports. And we really need to think more broadly about where supports and assistance can come from the person so they can achieve what it is that they want and need. So the integrated support star helps us think more broadly about that. So this was a quick review of just some of the key principles and tools that Charting the Life course brings forward to help us have good planning conversations. We have the focus person at the center of conversations and planning. We recognize that the person exists within the context of their family, and that families also need support that assists them to navigate successfully over time. We understand that a good life is made up of a wide range of experiences and opportunities across many life domains that are really important to all people. The three buckets reminds us to think broadly about supports and resources that people need, to go beyond just those paid services, to look to a wider array of supports. The integrated support star guides us to think broadly about where supports can come from as well, and how we can effectively combine a variety of supports. The trajectory helps us think about where a person is right now, what's been learned through past experience, how they define a good life, where they're headed in the future, and what experiences can be created that are in line with their vision of a full good life. And of course, we know that this way of thinking and planning can be helpful at any point in time of someone's life, all across the lifespan. I also wanted to be able to share with you some examples of students who have used some of these strategies in their planning with schools. And I really appreciate that these students and family members have offered to let me use their stories to help give you some idea of how these concepts have been helpful to them. So you can see here, Charting the Life Course portfolio, it's really a combination of a couple of different tools that can be used to help someone envision and identify what it is they want in their future and plan the activities and opportunities that will help them over time. And what I've got here are a couple of those terms that you see in IEP and transition planning. This whole concept of being person-centered, and that we need to understand people's interests, preferences, hopes, and dreams. There's that term age-appropriate transition assessment. The principles and tools in Charting the Life course and other person-centered tools can really help us create that. It also helps us think about present level of performance. Think about, that definition of transition, a coordinated set of activities in a results-oriented process. This helps us kind of lay that out. Measurable post-secondary goals, thinking about what does a good life look like for that person? Where are they headed? What do they not want to have? That fits right in with what's required in high school transition planning. And of course, that involvement from and connection with post-school programs and supports. The integrated support star comes in there beautifully. So here's the first example I'll share with you, and this is Anders. The first page of this Charting the Life course portfolio is called a one-page profile. And this is really a brief and positive introduction to the person. And you can create a one-page profile for lots of different types of situations. But here, the one-page profile is written for a specific purpose, which is to identify what is needed to support Anders to go back to the school setting once COVID was a bit more under control in the spring of 2021. So this was the one-page profile that really led Anders' school planning and really allowed him to be able to show this to the school, to say what's important to him, what he needed for support, and it gave him a place at the table to guide his own planning. It was then followed by a trajectory, and this shows both Anders' idea for what he wants in his future life, and it also has the perspective of his mom, Kathy. You can see there on the right-hand side, this is it called a vision tool that has you think through all the different life domains and identify some experiences and opportunities from a family's perspective about what they would like to see for their family member. So it really kind of helps balance those perspectives. Here you see some planning notes that Anders and his mom created to be able to bring to and share with the school team. Anders was able to very clearly tell the school what he wanted and needed for support to re-enter the school in person. Later, the next meeting, he and his mom were able to discuss with the school what his current, next, and future priorities were to figure out. So they really applied this to a several year transition plan, and it allowed Anders to be able to self-advocate and his mom to be able to direct the school planning for that whole broader time frame that he would still be connected with the school district. This is a couple of examples from Emma. Here you see Emma's own ideas about who she is, what she likes, and what she wants to do. But most of us really need to draw on the ideas of those who know us best when we think about a plan for the future. Emma and her mom decided to bring in the whole extended family together to come up with some ideas and to do some future planning. Emma spends some time at her mom and her dad's houses separately. And you can imagine that her parents sometimes have different ideas about how to support her and what their thoughts are for her future. This process allowed Emma and her family to think together about what a good life would look like for Emma. Here's an example of her, one-page profile. And then here you see some other examples of notes from Emma's planning that include ideas from her whole family. She had grandparents and family friends and her sibling, and a lot of people came together to share their ideas about their hopes and dreams for Emma. But what they really needed to work on is figuring out a plan for the next year of school. So this trajectory really zeroed in on what the next school year needed to include. Emma is part of a school district that had a lot of turnover in the last few years, and they really struggled to get back on track through COVID. Emma's school plan started to include a lot of classes, repeat classes she's already done and activities that she had done even for a couple of years, and she was really ready to move on, and her family needed her to move on, but the school was struggling a little bit because of so much turnover. So the family chose to take the planning that was done using Charting the Life course and other person-centered tools to really direct the school to their priorities and requests. This shows excerpts from a plan that Emma and her family created that was shared with the school that gave ideas for how her transition requirements could be met with classes, community-based activities, related services, different learning activities, and vocational exploration. This was an instance where the family really needed to include the superintendent's office to help. The school was then able to really get on board. And this provided a way for the school to really come up with a more thorough plan. And it really led to Emma and her family's advocacy and the ability to direct her school planning. It's good to know that she's having a great school year this year. So that really helped. This is a trajectory from a student named Travis, and this includes both his ideas for his good life and his family's values that are added right, to that right-hand side of the trajectory. This is some of the things that guide their thinking and his thinking, and they want all supporters to understand and respect it. So it's right there on the trajectory. The team was able to come up with some very specific classes and activities and supports that needed to be put in place over the next high school year and were included in his IEP. This is a quick example of an integrated support star. So this is another version of the integrated support star where each section is split into current and future. So this allowed Jamie and her family to think about what was currently in place, what are the supports that are in place now. And then when she came up with what her goals were for her next year and her future, they were able to say, okay, these are the supports to be able to make that happen are not in place right now. So what do we need to do in the future? What are some of the supports we need to explore and add in the future in all of these sections to allow her to be able to meet her goals? So that's just a couple of examples of how charting the life course and some other person-centered thinking and planning tools were used to really support and complement high school transition planning. So again, charting the life course is not just for people with a disability. It's based on concepts that work for all people. These concepts and principles and tools can help anyone think critically, envision good life outcomes, plan, combine resources, problem solve. I do want to say that, it's not about the tools. It's not about sitting down and filling out those worksheets. Doing charting the life course isn't the point. Filling out those tools is not the point. The point is supporting people to have good lives, to think about what they want in their life, what's meaningful to them, and to be able to figure out how to get closer to that vision over time. Charting the Life course also provides a lot of great resources to support you to think through your planning conversations at any stage of life, no matter what you're focusing on at the moment. A couple of great resources here are the Experiences and Questions Guide that really takes you through all of those interconnected life stages and life domains, poses some questions for you to think about experiences and opportunities that you may want to put in place. And then there are some quick guides that allow you to focus on a particular life stage and help you think through life experiences to consider. You can see that there is a transition to adulthood or adult life quick guide here that can really help you think about some things to consider in your high school planning. So I encourage you to check out the Charting the Life course website. Everything that's on there is just available to download and use, and to kind of inspire and guide you to think about how these principles and tools may help you in your high school transition, or really any life stage thinking and planning. You'll see many more principles and some tools, videos, examples of how charting the life course has been applied in many different situations. This has really been a quick overview of some of the key principles and tools. The framework really guides us to think differently about supporting people with disabilities and their families, have different types of conversations. It encourages people and families to be able to advocate for more effective and responsive planning, supports, practices, and even policies and systems. So I thank you for your time tonight. I hope this has piqued your interest, and I hope you keep your eyes and ears open for opportunities to learn more and try charting the life course in your own life. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.